Okay. So I am honored to introduce Lior Lev Surkaz. He is the chef, spice blender, and owner of La Boite. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Amazing, bravo.
Okay, good. La Boite in New York City. He has been featured in many publications such as the New York Times, Vogue, In Style, Every Day with Rachel Ray, the Food and Wine magazine, and much more. He has been spicing up kitchens all over the world. We are selling a signed copy of his beautiful new book, Mastering Spice.
Yeah.
Please contact me if you're interested in purchasing this. We have them in at the JCC. And I'm going to hand the floor over to Chef Lior. Thank you. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Lisa. This is great. I'm really excited we're able to do this, even though we were supposed to see each other in the spring, I believe, but then life happens. But they give you lemons, you make Zoom out of it or something like that. It's all good. I gotta say, you mentioned all of these great publications. I think that the highlight of the career was Hadassah magazine. This is when my mother finally said, so you do have a job. When Hadassah magazine came out and I was featured there, I was like, okay, it only took 20 years to get to Hadassah. The Vogue, the New York Times, that didn't matter one bit. It was that publication. So I'm sure the people on this call will appreciate the plugin. Probably most of them are subscribed to this. So super excited to be here. Wanted to begin by saying that feel free if you want to type in any question in the chat box, things that you want to know about spices, about cooking, about life. Let's keep it to those areas. If you want to know things about other stuff, I'll try to answer. I don't know that I can, but yeah, type them in. Happy to answer them. This should be a fun evening together of cooking and talking about spices and hear your thoughts about how you use or don't use spices or cook or don't cook. So I'm really be happy to hear about that. And if there's anything that we have not covered and tomorrow morning you wake up with this urgent really question about what to do, Lisa has my email. I'm happy to share it with all of you. I'm happy to answer those as we go. We also have great content on our website where we have lots of recipes and cooking tips and ideas. And we do send an email every afternoon at 5 p.m. for the last 200 and something days since this disaster started. We made it into something nice, and we really keep the community together, and lots of great tips and tricks and recipes. And so also an open invitation to join us on our newsletter and daily recipes. Oh, we're having somebody. Yep. Okay, that's good. So my name is Lior Lev Surkaz. I was born and raised in Israel. It's kind of surprising that I ended up cooking for a living, because I grew up in what I think was one of the worst culinary environments in the world. It was a kibbutz in the 70s in Israel. So food was pretty bland and no colors. It was shades of brown and gray. Textures were nowhere to be found. It was a lot of mushy kind of food. A bunch of angry people cooking food. But I discovered very quickly the beauty of the Israeli landscape and the Israeli people. Probably one of the most complex culinary scenes, I think, in the world, maybe second to Queens, New York, where in one building you can have somebody from Iraq or Iran or from Morocco or from Budapest or from France, so it doesn't matter. And this beautiful culinary landscape where neighbors just share this thing. So I really discovered quite quickly that food might be something that I could, be interested in and learning from all of these ethnicities and communities. I didn't get into cooking early on in life. Nobody in my family has either a restaurant or is a cook and whatnot. It started a bit late as a teenager. My mother had a job that required her to work late hours. So myself and my younger sister were mainly cooking dinner and lunch for the family. And I just enjoyed every minute of it. And following my military service in Israel, I decided to give it a try and work. And after a couple of years of working in a catering company in Rishon LeZion, for those of you who are familiar with Israel and doing a lot of bar mitzvahs and weddings and other events, I decided that maybe I should pursue some formal education. And I sat down with my parents. It was in 1997, and I broke the news that I would like to be a cook or a chef. And my dear mother was in tears, and she turned around to my dad and said, "Moshe, what did we do wrong?" And she kind of recovered quite quickly from that and turned back. And she said, "You know what? As a proud Jewish mother," she said, "if you are going to be a failure in life, why don't you be the best failure that could be? So why don't you go to France and study there, because they're going to make a good failure out of you?" And which I did. I left Israel to go to culinary school in 1997. It was a 2-year program in a very prestigious culinary school, and stayed there for 3 more years to work before I moved to New York in 2002, not because I wanted to. There was always a woman involved in the story. She really wanted to move to New York. The long story short is that I moved, and then she dumped me a week before that move. She is happily married in Israel. I'm happy here, and I thank her every day for kind of having me move to New York. I was working in a very nice restaurant on the Upper East Side called Daniel, owned by Chef Daniel Boulu, who owns a bunch of restaurants in the US and outside. And after about 6 or so years, decided to take my 20 or something years of experience and devote my career and my life pretty much to spices. The idea that I like a lot about spices is that they really tell a story. It doesn't matter who you are and where you're from. The ability to use different ingredients really transforms your food. And it doesn't need to be 20 or 30. It could be 2 or 3 different spices. They really make or break, I think, a dish. They take it from that 2-dimensional to a 3-dimensional food. So I decided to actually revive, in a way, one of the oldest trades in the world of spice trading, from the farmers that grow them around the world, to bringing them to here to the United States and sharing them with home cooks like yourselves tonight, but also with a lot of chefs that we work with. And a really great experience the last 13 years. We have 2 facilities, one called La Boîte, which is our storefront in Hell's Kitchen on 11 and 51st. We're currently closed because of whatever is happening. We only do online orders or pickup orders. And our second facility, which is our little factory, which is a few blocks down the road from the store. As of last year, we are either sadly or happily, I don't know what we are, but the reality is that we are the last spice manufacturer in Manhattan. Manhattan was one of the biggest hubs of spice trading in the US. And little by little over the years, some businesses closed, a lot of them moved, some of them got bought. And my dear friend, who was running her family business for she inherited it. It was running for about close to 100 years, had to sell the building and retire. I was very, very sad those few weeks that she was very knowledgeable and a great source for me, and really helped me start the business. At the same time, I'm happy that she can enjoy, some retirement, although I'm sure she misses the hustling and the bustling of selling bags and pallets and dealing with foreign countries. So we make that. I have a little presentation for you that we can go through in a couple of minutes. And then my plan is to show you a couple of dishes and talk to you about how to use spices on a daily basis and cooking. So we'll do that, and then we'll go back. So we should be able to share the screen. We tested it earlier. So we're gonna do that. Fantastic. You could still hear me? We're all good, Lisa? Yay, amazing. So the world of spices. Move to the next slide, if that happens. There we go. So one of the main questions is why spices? the short answer is none of your ingredients, your produce, your vegetables, your fruit, your meat, your fish, they don't come pre-seasoned. You need to add some sort of a seasoning. Salt, pepper, paprika, cumin, chilies, whatever gets you going. So there's the need to season food. The important thing also to remember is that they are an ingredient. So if you're making a recipe or a dish, it would be a shame to buy really good fish or produce or protein and then use mediocre spices. You're not going to add anything to your dish. So they are an ingredient and they're very important to do as such. Another point is that pretty much anything that you cook, whether it's sweet, savory, a beverage, a roast, anything could benefit from spices. We talked earlier about this emotional connectivity, whether it's, dishes that you grew up eating and you want to bring those flavor into them, or you want to get inspired by another country that you visited or you're excited. So they could definitely do that. They're also great storytelling, about some dishes from other way. And, that phrase that I like a lot about traveling without leaving your kitchen, adding these exotic spices in one way really takes you somewhere for half an hour or an hour and really transports you without having to go anywhere. And sadly, we aren't even able to go anywhere these days. So that's another thing. There's some health and well-being benefits for sure. By using more spices, you'll discover that you're consuming less sodium, salt, or sugar. Spices or have some sodium and a little sweetness in them, or they just satisfy your palate. So there's less need to add sodium and sugar. And I think these are some things to remind. I wouldn't see spices as a medicine, but they could definitely benefit your everyday diet. And also portion control. You will see that by using more spices and eating food that's more flavorful, you're just eating less of whatever it is that you're consuming. And the last thing here is obviously that there are natural flavor and color. So that's another great thing. That's a fun picture. I got to travel to India last year. So that's me standing in the middle of those are fennel plants. You can see how tall and how dense the field are. And the farmers really have to go one by one and pick those flowers so that they can then dry them and make fennel seeds, which, we take for granted at the store. It's a lot of work, hard labor, and it's really fascinating. I have way more appreciation and respect for the farmers, not that I didn't have before, but even more so after those amazing 9 days in India. Spices should be used along the way as you're cooking. Before you season something, during the cooking, you taste, you adjust. Don't wait for the end and then just throw a whole bunch of spices on your dish. It's not really a good idea. The other nice thing about it is that you don't even have to cook anything. You could slice a piece of fruit or a vegetable, or if you like raw fish or raw meat, you don't need a lot. You don't need heat to benefit from spices. And you can also integrate them into your beverages, coffee and tea and water. And if you want to have a cocktail, by all means, those are all great tools. They could be used whole, they could be used ground, both ways, and we'll talk about it a little bit as we're cooking. And you can use them as a single ingredient, or you can use spice blends. Sometimes it's a bit challenging to have a lot of single spices. So actually having blends, whether you purchase blends or whether you made your own, so those are also great idea on how to use them. This is me again in that same trip, a few days after. I'm standing in what you don't see the whole image, obviously. It's about 22,000 pounds of chilies. So talk about sneezing and coughing and crying and all of the above. But a beautiful scenery of these tremendous fields and drying storage of chilies. We spoke a little bit, the really opportunity on putting them in sweet and savory, in baking and making breads and all of the above, or simple desserts. Whether you apply them on fresh food, whether you choose to prepare something that was frozen and just add a little bit of the spices, it works fantastic. In beverages, again, whether you steep them and leave them for a while, whether you want to add a little pinch of ginger or cardamom to your coffee in the morning or in the afternoon, integrating them into dough of bread, pizza, flatbreads, cookies, cakes, a great opportunity, and a bunch of confections with chocolates and sugars and fruit. So a lot of great opportunities really anywhere you go to add spices along the way. Same picture, just as a fun fact here. So I went to see the drying facility, and there were these amazing women sitting in what would be, you don't see again, the whole image is about the size of a football field. And these amazing, adorable people from the village are sitting and de-stemming chilies one by one. So imagine a chili, it has a little stem. There's no machine to do that. So they are sitting each with, at a time, they get a 66-pound bag. It's a lot of chilies, and de-stemming them. And I asked if I could join the party. They, of course, laughed at this rookie joining the de-stemming party. I sat there. They said I did a good job. I was a bit slow. So I needed to up my game for my next visit in India to kind of catch up. But one of the points I want to emphasize in this is I at least have never looked at chilies the same again. When I buy a bag of de-stemmed chilies, of remembering the labor and the hours and the effort that it takes to really make one bag of de-stemmed chilies. So, or if you're buying chili flakes, just gives you a perspective. Couple of things to think about, not to go too in depth, but it's really rethinking how we use spices. Can we bring them into our everyday lives and not saying, I only cook a particular type of food? I think that conversation is no longer relevant. I think whatever it is that you eat and cook, spices should be part of that. The idea of researching new varieties in new countries, and can we grow some things in the United States? And we are more and more every year growing some sesame and harvesting salts and even some saffron and all of that. And then incorporating, like I said earlier, into prepared foods, into beverages and all of that. And the last part of here saying celebrating, really about making this fun experience. Spices really bring a lot of fun to the dish that you're making. There's a seasonality, there's special occasions. So really making a thing. And even if you're getting a group of, if you can these days, having a few family members or within your household, having these little cooking and spice blending challenges where everybody gets a few things and you make your own blend. So I think that could be another great way of really celebrating spices and the history and the culture and everything that they stand for. I believe this was the last quick thing. So I'm going to stop my sharing and I'm going to go back to looking at you from here. Are we all good so far? Questions? All good? Lisa? Yeah, all good. Great. No question. So that's good. Before we go into the cooking, so Lisa mentioned the Mastering Spice book. Thank you. It was a great project to work on. Prior to writing Mastering Spice, we published a book called The Art of Blending that have, here we go, right here, that has a lot of great recipes on how to use some of the spice blends we do and tips and tricks for everyday cooking. And then the book that followed it was The Spice Companion. So this book is more about a dictionary or an encyclopedia, if you will, about 102 different spices and how they look when they grow on the plant. And then once they're dry and ground, their history, what parts are being used, how you can mix and match between different spices, and then a few ideas on how to blend them. And then obviously Mastering Spice that Lisa was kind enough to show earlier. The idea behind Mastering Spice was quite simple. I cook every day at home for my family. I have 2 young boys and my wife, and I don't do a lot of very complicated cooking at home during the week. I work long hours. So I cook very simple dishes, but I'm sure you have experienced it, or I think at least, you do the same dish once, twice a week over time, over the year. And at some point it was like, do I want to eat this again? And one of the ways for me, at least, to make it a bit different is by cooking that same dish, but changing the seasoning and saying, I like this preparation or the method. And it's one thing that's important in cooking is feeling comfortable with the method and the technique. And I found out that that's by changing the flavor, the seasoning, the dish became something completely different without too much effort. So that was the main idea behind Mastering Spices, to show 42 everyday recipes of grains and legumes and eggs and vegetables and fish and some baked goods. And once you figure out your recipe, your ingredient time and temperature, and you're getting good at it, now you could start playing. You can make the same dish next week, just change the flavor, the seasoning, and you'll get something completely different. It's very rewarding. It's fun because you don't get bored with the food and everybody's happy. So that was kind of the thought process behind it. And I do see a little something in the chat. Let me check what. Do you usually go to the source to buy spices for la boîte? By Anna. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. I would like to go every time and get my backpack and go for long travels. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of time, and most of the stuff grows in Asia or in the Middle East. And so it's not always possible. I try to go, obviously not right now, but hoping to go back on the road. The beauty of technology, such as the one we're using tonight, is that I could still communicate with our farmers and our growers and our brokers. I was on a phone the other day, last week, with the grower of 2 herbs that we buy from Israel. And it was just super exciting. I was in my office in Manhattan. He was out in the field with his cell phone and with the camera, was showing me the progress of the plants and how we're doing in harvesting. So even though we can't be there physically, we still keep in touch as much as we can. So that's super exciting. And it's very rewarding for me to know what spice I'm using and who grew it. That's kind of like the highest level that I can. It's not always possible because there's just a lot of growers and it's not always easy to find them. So hopefully, Anna, without my glasses, yeah, Anna, hopefully that answered the question. You could use single spices, you could use spice blend. I wanted to show you tonight 2 recipes. Maybe we'll do a third, it depends of how to use spices. So the first dish, it's called chraime. I know for those of you who don't speak Hebrew, it's that. So it's a North African dish that's traditionally served on Shabbat, on Friday night. There are a lot of variations, and as there are Jews, if you see what I mean. I mean, one Jew has 10 opinions, and you can do the math when you get a room with 10 or 20. But most people will agree that it's a tomato-based stew where you cook some fish, you poach or you braise some fish in, whether it's a whole fish, whether it's pieces of fish, filet, no filet, how hot you like it. Everybody has their own version. Chraime became a very popular preparation in the last 10, 15 years, where it's now served in restaurants and many households, and really stepped out of the North African scene and kind of is found everywhere, which makes me very happy. So in order to start it, what I do is I take, I warm slightly a pan or a saucepan or saute pan like this one, and I'm gonna put a little bit of olive oil. I am quite spoiled. This is my dad's olive oil that he presses in his orchard in Israel, in the Galilee, where I'm from. So it's a fantastic, really beautiful, slightly herbaceous, peppery oil. So I'm gonna put some of that. And then traditionally you would use garlic. So fresh garlic, which is fantastic, and I love fresh garlic. A couple of things. I don't always remember whether I bought garlic or not, and you don't really want to leave garlic for months on end. So I use dry garlic, and I use these beautiful sliced garlic that are dried. They're slightly toasted and dried. Aside from being pretty much shelf stable for a long time, they also don't burn quickly. So for those of you who cook with garlic, you know that you need to pay attention on how much garlic you want to put and how hot you're going to have your pan. With the dry garlic, there's really very little risk before it burns. So I'm going to let it slightly infuse in the oil. And while this is doing, I'm going to season my fish. So here I happen to, you could do it with cod or halibut or a branzino or a grouper or a snapper. Here I happen to have some barramundi. So there's now great sustainable farming of barramundi in the West Coast, which is great. Makes me very happy that there's more and more sustainable fish farming, and that's eco-friendly and organic and all of the above. So I like using this fish. The other reason that I'm mentioning the fish preparation is that oftentimes most people will just start cooking, season the fish, and put it right away in the pan. I like to season my fish ahead of time. It gets more flavor. It develops more flavor. It really penetrates the whole fish so that it's not just on the surface. And you could do this even the day before, the night before, season your fish. I would just keep the salt part of the pre-seasoning. Otherwise, it's going to cure the fish and extract a lot of the water. So it's going to be a bit dry. But you could do the spice part of it, cover, put it back in the fridge, take it out 30 minutes before you're starting to cook, and then you get it there. Here, I wanted to show you that step, so I didn't pre-season, but imagine. So I'm going to use a little bit of salt on this side first, just like that. And then I'm going to use a blend that has a little bit of turmeric, some onion, some garlic, a little bit of cumin, and season the fish with it. So as I said, we could have done this part of the spice without the salt last night and let it sit in the refrigerator and then take it out. So turn it around. It's important to season both sides because you eat both sides. That's the only reason. So don't skip one side. And then same here, a little bit of seasoning on this other side, just like that. And this is, it's just the technique. If you have your own preferred spice or spice blend, this will work as well. You know, here we're using this blend that I mentioned, but if you'd like to use any other blend, please do try it. Chances are that it's going to be fantastic. So I'm going to let this sit on the side, increase slightly the heat so we can get cooking here and let this develop a little bit. I'm also going to add the same spice into my oil. And this is more of kind of a Southeast Asian Indian way of incorporating spices into food, is by what they call blooming them or let them develop into the oil. So I wish, again, you had the ability to smell through your iPads or your computers or your phone. It's not available yet. So we're going to let this kind of infuse slowly, increase a bit the heat. And then into here, what I'm going to add is some tomatoes. So in season, if you have fresh tomatoes, fantastic. If not, just whole or diced or crushed canned tomatoes will do the job as well and would be really tasty and delicious. While this is happening, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to add the lemon. So this is where it becomes a bit more my recipe and less of a traditional one. You would rarely, or I don't think you'd even at all see a traditional recipe calling for lemon inside. If at all, it will mention maybe a squeeze of lemon in the end. And I, over the year, found out that I really like having a little bit of this acidity and slight bitterness, but also the beautiful texture of eating that cooked lemon. And also, I find that in a lot of recipes, what you're lacking is acidity. You know, there's salt, there's pepper, there's a little bit of sweetness, but acidity is a very important factor in food to begin with. So why not add it into the dish? So I'm gonna pretty much dice a whole lemon to add into my fish dish. Hoping you guys are still okay and following up. I don't think somebody is cooking along, but you can take notes. And I think Lisa is also recording it and might be able to share it if you're nice to Lisa. So you can duplicate this for maybe tomorrow night for Shabbat. if you're up for the challenge. These are all fairly simple ingredients to get together. And so dice that. So this is starting, I mean, again, you don't have the smell of vision or the smell of phone. I'm gonna add my tomatoes in here. Beautiful. So we have our tomatoes here. And what I'm gonna do is, as they're cooking, I'm just gonna, with a wooden spoon, kind of break these beautiful tomatoes into big chunks. We don't need it to be pureed. It's nice to still have a little bit of texture in our sauce. So just break them down like that. And also, if you remember the presentation of we did before, the idea of really seasoning as we go. So I'm not gonna wait till the end. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt to begin with. And then later on in a few minutes, check how it's doing. If I need more salt, I'm gonna add more salt and see how we need and what we need, I'm sorry. So finishing up here, dicing the lemon. We got our fish ready. As soon as the sauce is ready, we're gonna add our fish inside. And somebody earlier in the conversation, I apologize, I don't remember who brought up the idea of cooking fish and it being challenging. Overcooked fish was never a good idea. And you just want to pay a little bit attention when you cook fish. One of my bosses in France had this slightly annoying phrase that says, when you think the fish is cooked, it's probably overcooked. So take it off before. I was like, how do you know? He said, you will know. One day you will know. So it's really about, and with thicker fish or more oily fish, like, cod or black cod or salmon, there's less risk. And even if they're slightly, on the medium or medium well, they're still tasty and delicious. With, thinner pieces of fish, this is when you want to be a bit more careful. Another good kind of tip for this preparation of this recipe, if you're going to make it, is to, you can make the sauce ahead of time. Make it a day before, 2 days before, let it cool down, put in your refrigerator. And like that, when you're ready to make your jaime, just warm it up, bring it to a little simmer, add your fish, and then you're ready to go. It's also a very easy thing to serve for the whole table. You could just put the whole plate or the whole pan. You can also, once you put the fish inside, you can bake it in the oven if you don't want to leave it on the stove. That's another great way of preparing this dish. And any type of fish could really go inside, or if you want to add a few vegetables, that's totally fine and will work as well. So we have our lemons in, and they're going to start cooking. Just like that. Also looks really nice, the yellow and the red. So that's fantastic. Super. And one more thing I'm going to add into this pan is cilantro. So I like to use a lot of cilantro, generally speaking, and also in my jaime, really brightening it up, adding this fresh, herbaceous note. I don't make a big fuss or big deal from the stems. I like them. I think that if they're chopped fine enough, they're delicious. And there's no need to do too much of a fine chop, because they're going to cook and soften. So just a quick rough chop like that. And in we go. Like that. In the sauce. And so our sauce is pretty much, everything is in there. We're just going to let it simmer for a bit. And I'm going to cover it with a lid so there's no splatters and splashing. And come back to it in a few minutes once we're ready to cook our fish. So far, so good? Yay. Fantastic. All right. Oh, and the person who asked about the fish, if you don't want to cook fish, I said earlier, just get somebody else to make you fish. That's I think, another good tip. As much as I like cooking, I am well aware, I'm going to say it out loud, you can record it, not everybody should cook. Some people should just eat and stay out of the kitchen. I am married to a living proof who tried miserably many times, and we put an end to it. It was just too painful to watch. It was a lot of waste of good ingredients. The only people who benefited from that idea were the pizza delivery people, because at the end, when everything's burnt, that's what you do. So this is, you can see it. I would hope, yeah. This sauce, put it back, kind of on a medium low. Put the lid on it and let it simmer for a few minutes while our fish. And while this is happening, let's make a little salad. So I love salads and I like to add a lot of things into them. So I have a very well-stocked pantry of pickles and cured olives and vinegars and oils and obviously spices and nuts. And I think that's what makes salads fun. It's, you know, pick up a few vegetables, bits and pieces, whatever's in the fridge salad, and then start tossing a lot of fun stuff into them. So one of my favorite vegetables is fennel bulbs, and it's getting into it's good season right now. You can roast fennel in the oven. You could cook it. You know, if you have the book or if you are going to get the book, there's a beautiful fennel and orange roasted in a pan with some sherry vinegar. Or you could just eat it raw, and it's delicious. So however you wanna cut it in half and slice it, you wanna dice it. I also just like to simply leave the whole bulb like that and then cut these like rings, a little bit like an onion that you will cut, just like that. It cuts through the fibers of the fennel. Sometimes fennel could be slightly fibery, and so like that you have these beautiful like rings of fennel. I'm gonna put them into my little bowl here, and we're gonna add a little bit of olive oil, of course, because everything needs olive oil. A little more, and then we're gonna add a little bit of salt into it. There we go. And for this salad, I thought we would use this blend we call shabazi. It's green chilies, cilantro, a little bit of garlic. It's based on a Yemenite preparation called schug, which is a chili paste, if you've ever had one of those. This is in a powder form. So it has a nice herbaceous note, a little kick. And you can see that I'm using dried herbs in a cold preparation. A lot of people are a bit intimidated with this idea of using dried herbs to begin with. Here, not only we're using dried herbs, but it's also a cold application. So that will go inside. We're gonna take a little lemon and add some lemon juice. And I like to do it kind of as a first step because I wanna let the fennel slightly cure itself in the salt and in the spice and in the olive oil and the lemon juice, so that when come time to eat, it already absorbed all of these great flavors. And get a spoon here, mix it all up just like that. So already looking great. There we go. So that's going to sit here like that. I had a few scallions in my refrigerator, so we're gonna just toss this in. And if you have any celery, or if you have any other things in your refrigerator, or cucumbers, you could totally put those inside, or carrots. So this is my my scallions that I have in the fridge going in, and also some of the end of the season type tomatoes that I have here. That I'm simply gonna cut in half and add them in. And also with tomatoes, if I'm making a tomato salad, that's also something that I like to season a good 15, 20 minutes before I serve them and let them sit in the oil and the salt and the lemon, and they really ooze all of these beautiful juices and also come to temperature, you know. So I'm gonna add these tomatoes inside. and let them sit here with everything else. That's that. And now comes the accessorizing part of the dish. So is what else can we throw inside that's around us? So I have some chopped hazelnuts, and it could be pine nuts or almonds or walnuts or anything that you have. So these are toasted hazelnut, or as they call them around here, these crunchy things. So these are the crunchy things that go inside my salad. And black cured olives. So these are salt cured olives that are pitted. And you can either add them whole or just like simply tear them by hand. You know, knives are a nice thing, but your hands are a great tool also. So plus it's good for your skin. So you're doing two things at once. It's a spa and a cooking operation. And so just tearing a bit. And what these will do, aside from the beautiful flavor and kind of the chewy texture, they also bring sodium, salinity that we spoke about earlier into the dish, so that we don't need to use that much salt for our salad. So a few of those will go inside. And into here, you can add, you know, if you wanted to add some raisins, if you wanted to add some other nuts, why not we'll add some orange into it. I like oranges in the salad, and nice fruit, and oranges are becoming better by the day these days. So we're just gonna remove the skin of the orange just like that. And I don't know if you watched a lot of, you know, cooking videos or shows. There's the fancy way of removing the segments, which is great, and I enjoy doing it once in a while, but it's time consuming, and it's also a bit wasteless because you end with all of the core that you really have nothing to do with. So instead of doing that, we're just going to cut this orange into half again, and just cut these slices with everything inside and just add them into our salad. Look how pretty it is. See, it's already looking quite nice. And add them here. And oops, add them into here. Voila. And one other thing that I found in my fridge from a recipe testing that I've done the other day, I did a cured salmon, like a gravlax or lux. Hopefully you're aware that lux and smoked salmon aren't the same thing. My kids still think that it says, why is this smoky? I said, because it's smoked. We like the nut one. It's called lux or gravlax. So I was doing a recipe. So I have a lot of dill, fresh dill leaves. So I'm just gonna, you know, tear a few into here, just like that. Super easy. Might keep the stems for soup tomorrow and add them to my chicken soup, the stems. Maybe a few more. There we go. Just like that. Very easy. No need to even chop it. It's fantastic with just like that, just the big pieces of dill leaves. And mix this all beautiful. That's a dish by itself. I mean, you don't need anything more than that. Maybe a glass of white wine and a little bit of bread, and you know, I'm a happy person. I don't need more than that. Salad is one of my happiest moments. It's just to eat a really nice salad. So we're gonna let this sit for a minute, and I'm gonna show you something else about that. Let's go back to our sauce, to our chaime sauce that's been. Look at that. So it's thickened a little bit. So that's nice. I'm just gonna put this lid here for a minute. There we go. Voila. And this should usually cook for about 15, 20 minutes before, as I said earlier, at this point, you could turn it off, let it cool down, store it in your refrigerator, use it a few days later. It will easily keep a week in your refrigerator. Because there's nothing here that's fish related, if you wanna keep some of it and toss it with some pasta or serve it with some chicken or something like that, totally fine. You know, so it's a preparation that could go many ways in being served. It's nice to know that even if you serve it at room temperature, It could be a nice dip or salsa or something like that. Very versatile preparation. Again, one recipe, one technique, many options. So somebody is sending, Anna, hi Anna again. In your own cooking, do you mostly use blends or individual spices? I use mainly spice blends. I blend all day long for work. We do nearly 300 different blends and with 300 different single spices or maybe more. I, when I cook, I like to have things very efficient. So the things that I use as singles are mainly chilies or cinnamon or cumin or coriander. But aside from that, I try to maximize and take a lot of great things and make a blend out of it so that it's easy to use and I can put it without having to grab 10 or 20 different jars of spices. I just take one or two. If you look at this fish blend earlier, there's about 17 spices in here. I wouldn't want to go and grab those 17 every time I'm making fish. I just put them all together. And the same goes with my salad shabazi blend. So I use a lot of blends in my day-to-day life. So we have our fish. We're gonna simply put it into our sauce and not all the way in, just kind of halfway in, like that. And like that. Here, very nice. Put this plate away, we don't need it. And just kind of leave it on kind of medium-low heat. There's no need to cook it too fast. As I said, if you wanted, you could take this whole pan and place it in the oven so you'd get heat from above and from underneath and everything. It would be fantastic, like a braised baked fish. Or if you're doing it on a stovetop, the same way that I'm doing now, just cover it with a lid like that. The top of the fish will be cooked as well as the bottom. And if it's too hot, just the bottom will be cooked, the top wouldn't be. So that's gonna do its thing. I'm gonna just increase the heat ever so slightly. 3. It's kind of nice because the induction, you could really go to very precise. I like fire, don't get me wrong. I do this because my stove is over there, but this is also nice. So back to our salad. We could have served it like that, and that would have been amazing, and I'm sure it is delicious. But another way of just another idea of presentation, if you want to kind of change it every once in a while, you'll take a plate or a serving plate. And so this is labneh or labneh, depending how you pronounce it. I don't know how familiar you are. It's basically a drained yogurt. So if you take a whole milk, whole fat yogurt and put it in a cheesecloth or a towel for a day or two, all the liquids, the water will come out and you'll end up with a very thick kind of yogurt. It's really beautiful, creamy, delicious, used a lot throughout the Middle East as a spread for breakfast with a little bit of olive oil, with some honey. You can make labneh balls and marinate them in olive oil. So a lot of, we go to one of those a day pretty much. It's about a pound. My kids eat it with pretzels and so on, or on bread. So it's kind of, or just dip vegetables in it. So I'm going to take a little bit of this labneh, and it's available, I'd say, pretty much anywhere. If you have like an ethnic store somewhere where you live, and if you don't, quite easy, any type of whole fat yogurt that you can buy. Either if you have a cheesecloth or if you want to sacrifice one of your towels and then wash it and put that whole container of yogurt, tie it with a little string or shoelace that's clean, not the dirty one, and then hang it from one of the kitchen cupboards, put a bowl underneath, and you'll see that the water starts dripping down. Leave it anywhere between 24 to 48 hours in your kitchen. So the first time I do it in a lot of home, people panic because it said it's going to go bad because it's outside. And I try to explain them the yogurt is already dead to begin with. Nothing will happen to your yogurt. So leave it out. The longer you leave it, the thicker or harder it will be. Some people like to add some salt. into the mixture before they drain it to give it some flavor. You could also add it later. So here I'm basically doing this kind of swoosh or spread preparation in the bottom of my plate, just like that. Spreading it nicely all over. And then adding a little bit of that spice blend on top of the yogurt. And this, by the way, if you put like a little drizzle of olive oil and you serve it with some bread, you can put the salad away. You don't even need the salad. This is as good as that. But since we made this beautiful salad, so in order to make it another fun presentation, we're just going to spoon this salad into the bowl, just like that. It's a lot about the presentation also, of course. Looks good, it might taste good. So put it all in here with all of the juices. There we go. Just like that. We can go ahead if we want to add a few more of these hazelnuts on top and maybe a few leaves of dill. Make it a bit more festive. And here you go. You have your, what should we call it? A fennel, citrus, and labneh salad. That would make a great dish. I wish I could pass it through the phone to you. Next time when we meet in person, I promise I will make you one of those. We'll find a house somewhere and we'll all get together for dinner. And then let's check on our friend here, the barramundi. So it still needs a couple of more minutes, but it's not too far away. Yeah, so those are those two dishes. And really to kind of bring it back together, I mean, nothing here is a new ingredient. Those are all familiar ingredients: fish, tomato, fennel, orange, olives. The idea is really to take the spices and bring them into the game. And that's what's going to take it really to that, I think, that next level of tomorrow making the same fennel preparation and using maybe whole coriander seeds and some caraway and maybe some powdered ginger, and that would be great. And the same with this dish. Tomorrow season it with something completely different. Don't be afraid. One easy way to kind of get, you know, more familiar with cooking with spices, take what you have at home already. I don't know how good it is. That's a whole other intervention, but whatever it is that you already cook, that you have and you're going to eat, if you're open to this exercise, take a few pieces of it on a teaspoon, on a fork, in a cup, and sprinkle different spices on these different little tastings, if you will, and taste them and see how you like it or how you don't like it. Hopefully that's not the case, so that you get this idea of what in your case works, because, you know, we all taste differently, we smell differently. It's very hard to say use ginger with this. Some people don't even like ginger. Why would I recommend that you use ginger? It's a very personal thing. And as you're doing these little tasting, you're also going to realize perhaps that some of the spices that you have home, they shouldn't be at your home anymore. You know, they're left from the family with that armchair that you got as part of the will. They don't become better with time. You know, they live for a couple of years and then you got to get new ones, and just keep the container because maybe the container is fun and it's good. So hold on to it. Buy small amounts of spices. Try to really make it part of your weekly or monthly shopping routine, so that you check your sort of inventory. Do I need more of this? Do I need more of that? And another tip that sounds obvious and silly but really makes a big difference is try to have your spices near where you cook. If they're in a pantry in a different room, if they're in a cupboard underneath or up on top or in the back of the drawer, and your hands are dirty and you're in the middle, most people don't have this idea of saying, let me pause 1 second and go and check my spice rack in the pantry. You won't, you just won't. So the closer you bring them to where it is that you're cooking, chances are that you're going to use more. And just ask yourself, whatever it is that you're eating, drinking, cooking, can I add a spice to it? Maybe the answer is no, fine, that's totally okay. But maybe you can, and then that. We have a question for Aliyah. What can you teach us about sumac? Is there any substitute for sumac during COVID when we are not going out? So sumac, there's poisonous sumac. Don't eat that. That's not the good thing. Stick to the edible one. If you're unsure, don't go foraging for sumac unless you know what you're doing. Just go foraging in your supermarket or online. Sumac is finally a thing. It's here to stay. It's available in a lot of stores, definitely in New York and in the area, but also online. We sadly have to rely on that. But the good news is that it gives also opportunity to smaller manufacturers and growers to sell their goods online. So sumac is a berry. You have to grind it to use it if you want to eat it as is, because the center of it is very hard. You might break a tooth. And if you can imagine vinegar meets berries, like a raspberry or something, that's kind of what sumac will taste. So it has a nice fruity tang acidity to it. And so I'd recommend you try and you use it. It's kind of similar to a pomegranate sometimes. So those could be alternated. It's great on fresh raw ingredient, just some yogurt and some sumac on it, or just some vegetables with a little sumac in it. So a fun, great ingredient. And if you had or familiar with za'atar, the spice blend, a big component of za'atar, if done properly, of course, should have sumac in it. That's what gives it that little lemony acid taste. So thank you, Aliyah, for that question about this. So here our Barramundi friend, let's see how he's doing. Seems to me like it could be in a good, happy place. Yeah. So I'm going to turn off the heat. So you basically have, you see, this beautifully cooked barramundi with this delicious kind of chunky, slightly thick sauce. One thing to do if you're making this, make sure you have bread. This is where the bread becomes interesting. It's the dipping. Friday night makes total sense because there's challah. So it's where the challah becomes really interesting, is dipping it in. As I said earlier, if you have a little bit left over of the sauce, don't get rid of it. Even though there was some fish cooked in it, you can refrigerate it, serve it the next day or the day after with some vegetables. Nothing will go wrong with it. And as I mentioned earlier, this sauce is a base for many other wonderful preparation, not just chayme. And we could even have cooked a piece of chicken in here, chicken thighs, chicken breast, lamb, a lot of great ideas. And the same with our refrigerator everything I found salad. It's another great way to do it. And obviously don't forget your spices, because that's what's really going to take it to the next level. Can we get a copy of the recipe? Yeah, yes, I don't. The chayme is, I'm happy to share with you. I can do it. I can share it with Lisa, who has all of your contacts. In terms of the salad, this was just made up right now, but I'm happy to try and in the next couple of days, sit down and write it. My memory is not getting better with time, so the sooner I'll do it in the next few days, the better. But basically remember that vegetables, whatever you have, sliced, chopped, cut, olive oil, lemon juice, salt, couple of spices, whether you have chili flakes, you have some coriander seeds, things like olive, nuts, things like that. Toss everything together. Whether you want to serve it on top of this yogurt on the labneh, whether you want to serve it with tahini, that would be fantastic. So all of that. Do you have a website we can purchase your spices? Should I type it in the chat box? Yes?
Yes,
I can try
sure.
to do that. Okay. So here we go. LaWhatNY.com. So hopefully you can all see it. And I'm also going to put my email address here. If any of you want to connect after that with some questions, cooking tips, life therapy, anything I can help with. So it's Lior at LaWhatNY, and the website is LaWhatNY.com. great tips, tricks, things like that. I hope I can hear from you. This is not the end of it. And I hope that we could do this in person one day. Wouldn't that be nice for all of us to get together, cook some things, talk more about food, spices, and all of that. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. This was fun, and Lisa for organizing it, and Adia who's on the call. Thanks. And I had a blast. It's fun. I get to cook from home. This is great. That might be my dinner. That's it, ready to go. If anybody has any other thoughts or questions, I'm happy to answer them before we part ways or say goodbye.
Well, I think everybody is hungry right now.
I wish I can come and cook at your house. I'm not there. Oh, thank you for inviting me. Oh, you're welcome. So thank you a million times for joining me tonight. And Lisa, again, thank you for putting this together and organizing it. Feel free to reach out. I hope to see you all soon.
Well, thank you so much. This was such a treat. Wait, I think there's one other question. Oh, nope, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Does anybody else have any other questions before we part?
How do you share Salmon?
Yes.
You can unmute yourself. Let's do it. It's a big party. Unmute yourself.
My husband has a question.
I can only see half of you. There's probably more than that. Yeah. Oh, hi.
Hey, how are you? How do you grill salmon? How do you do salmon on the like in a pan without burning the actual skin? Like if you didn't do it that way, but if you just wanted to sear salmon, I'm always burning the skin, and then I can never get it crispy like the way they do it in the restaurants.
That's why
yeah. One thing you want to do is start on a low heat. There's this perception of like cranking up this hot pan oil and then searing the salmon.
Yeah.
It could, first of all, it could stick depending on the pan that you're using.
That's what happens all the time. It sticks.
Yeah. So if you're using a non-stick or a pan that is a non-stick pan, if that's a definition, start slow, put some fat oil into it, season your fish, put it skin side down, and move it a little bit in the first 30 seconds to 60 seconds to make sure that it doesn't, and then increase the heat and basically let it cook on about medium heat nearly all the way. The flipping on the other side is the last thing you want to do. That will get you a nice color and crispy skin. I don't know why I'm looking there. I could see you here. It's that thing of having the computer and the phone. And the beautiful thing about fish and salmon in particular, it has a built-in thermometer. You're looking on the side, and you're going to see how cooked it's going to start raising. So depending on your liking, if you like it more medium rare, when you feel you're ready, just flip it over for maybe 20-30 seconds, and that's it. And you get this beautiful crispy skin. It's not going to stick. It's not going to burn. And no more takeouts. I mean, it's nice that you do takeout from the restaurants. Yeah.
Well, somebody told me that if you put the salt on the skin, that also helps it not stick. Is that true?
Maybe. I don't know how much. I mean, you should put salt regardless because you want to season your fish. But I don't know that if your pan is just a stainless steel and it's too hot and there's not enough fat, it's just going to get stuck, or it's going to get burnt before your fish is actually cooked.
Right.
So low, slow, and it's going to be okay.
Okay. All right. I'm going to try it tomorrow.
Okay. There was somebody else, I think, who wanted to say something.
Hey, Lior, it's Anna. I have a question for you also, please.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to know if any of your spices are kosher friendly, your blends.
So I am the mashgiach at my company. It's a very strict hashgacha. So we don't have a hechsher on our products. However, I am very sensitive, to kosher and allergies, which are these days nearly the same, kind of. We do have some dairy powders that we process for some of our blends. We just do them at different times. We clean in between batches. We make sure, as I said again, kosher is one part. It's also a lot of the allergens that are now a relevant point. So we don't have the hechsher. It's about trust. I respect that. If when it comes to single spices, it's even easier because we don't do anything to them. We just pack them. So then
Right.
you're totally fine. There's still no hechsher, but there's less of a concern, I would say.
Okay, so it's just that you sometimes use dairy but you clean the equipment in between. So if I saw something I wanted, could I send you an email? You would let me know?
That's the best advice I could say. Email me ahead of time saying, I'm thinking about getting X, Y, and Z. What do you think? And I will let you right away. You might even have somebody in the family who is allergic to. Nowadays, there's allergies for pink peppercorn, coriander, cumin. I mean, you name it, there's an allergy for it. So just ask.
Thank you. Okay, I
My
will.
pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. Have a
I
good
will see you
night.
soon. Thank you.
It was
You
a real
too.
treat. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night.
Good night,
Bye.
everybody. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Lisa.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.